I have made every single mistake that Martin talks about in his book. Every single one of them. We were doing well, large YouTube presence, invested a lot of money into the SEO side of things. It was paying off for sure, but we kept coming back to our books. My income statement is telling me that we are absolutely killing it. We're making $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 profit, but where is the money? Something's going on. It ain't sales. We got to figure this out.
Expert advice, practical tips, real life stories. Have less stress, more time, and more money in your business. Welcome to the Cashflow Contractor.
Martin, I'm excited for today's episode. You've brought in someone special. How did you meet Cory?
I met Cory through Will Blake, who's been on our podcast before, foundation repairman from Charlotte. Has a cool background and an even cooler accent, if it's okay to comment on that.
Yeah.
But Will thought highly of him, and he expressed some interest in how to use bookkeeping to make better decisions, something we talk about a lot. And he actually engaged me. He bought the book, my book, and he and Tina, his accountant, in-company bookkeeper accountant, called up and engaged me to kind of go to it with him. So we've been doing that, and it's been a lot of fun. And hopefully it's paying off for you, right, Cory?
Yeah, it's definitely making a difference, and I think the best is yet to come.
Yeah. Cory, welcome to the podcast. Excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about how you met Will Blake and what that relationship's like.
Oh, how did I meet Will Blake? Been a couple of years now. I guess just a fellow foundation repair guy. I'm sure like how I meet most, I found him online, Facebook, social media somewhere, LinkedIn, sent him a message, talked to him. But kind of how we all got looped in here is Will actually come to a conference and present. Will is actually one of the presenters at a conference here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he had a couple different recommendations for books depending on what evolution in business you were at. And when he got to the financial section, one of the books he brought up was The Profit Problem. So I was trying to write down notes I might have even been trying to download them as he was showing them. And I wasn't able to get all of them, but I was able to get Martin's book. And so downloaded it, read it, ordered it, read it, liked it so much, gave it to our office manager, who's also our bookkeeper, had her read it, and also talked to Will and said, Will, man, this is awesome. And, at some point he said, man, I'm good friends with Martin. You want me to get you in contact with him? I said, hell yeah, let's do it. So it kind of just
That's great.
Full circle.
Yeah. Martin, are you paying commissions out to Will for book sales?
I will. haven't been so
great.
far. Been sending him some referrals on some other stuff he's got going, which we haven't talked about recently. But anyway.
Oh, cool. We need to get him back on the podcast. So you had mentioned the evolution of business, Cory. As Will was talking about the evolution of business and what stage you were in, what stage were you at whenever you met or you had that conference, I guess?
Yeah, so that conference wasn't that long ago, 5-6 months ago. We've taken action quick. I guess that's one thing I can say about myself is like when I get my mind made up, I'm ready to move. So he recommended it. I look up to Will enough to say, hey, if he's recommending something, I better get on it. So he recommended it. Read it. Reached out to him really quick, and got on Martin's schedule as soon as we were able to. And so we've been through a couple evolutions, and some of them are a step backwards. But we're really in the growth phase. We've grown strongly over the last 4 years. Which is about the defining moment when I took it from a part-time sideline gig to, all in, let's see what we can do with this thing. But we were making customers happy. We were doing good work. Our marketing, I don't know, for a growing company, I don't know that marketing's ever as good as you want it, but, we were doing well, large, YouTube, presence. Invest a lot of money into the SEO side of things. Like it was, paying off for sure. But we kept coming back to our books. And, I tried along with my father, fixing those books for quite some time. And we just kept getting stumped. And, full disclosure, like my father's never owned a business. So, some of the bookkeeping and spreadsheets and budgets that he was managing, he had a team around him to be able to help with those things. So when it was just me and him, we struggled a little bit, especially when being able to utilize the income statement and balance sheet to be able to make smart financial decisions for the business.
Can you share a little bit, Cory, about just kind of the structure of your business right now? How many people are on your team? How much are you doing in revenue? Like, give our listeners an idea of where your business is today and what the name is.
Yeah. So the name of our business is Hydro Help 911 Crawl Space and Foundation Repair. I'll start with the revenue because I like to joke about this a little bit. In short, I tell people we did 5 million in revenue last year. But the actual real number was 4,961,000. So we missed 5 million by like 38,000. And so the whole time I was on the phone with my sales manager, like, come on, man, like you can't, like, even if we don't make a profit on the job, just sell $39,000. Who cares about the profit? And we tried and we just couldn't pull it off. But I'm happy with, all joking aside, I'm happy with the number. And so we currently have, I think 20, right at 25, 26 employees. We're trying to hire for 2 positions. I'm not sure if those have been hired for yet. And we are shooting for 10 million as our goal this year. Pretty large goal. We know that. I think we have the team in place. It ultimately comes back to the marketing that we was talking about earlier. But yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate that I have a good management team under me. They are good at their job. They're good at, building a strong culture. They allow me to focus only on marketing and business growth, I guess marketing in the financial side and the business growth side. So processes and systems. My sales manager oversees our sales team. We have 5 sales reps. And then my production manager oversees, we have 4 crews, and hopefully within the next week or 2, we'll be adding our 5th crew.
Hey, when we talk again, as we will in a week or so, I don't know if we got it on there or not. I want to talk about using your books to determine what you need to grow from $5 to $10 million in a year. Okay, because we can plan on that. We haven't done that yet. But I would like to maybe jump back to the beginning a little bit. You started it as a lot of firefighters do in the off weekends when you're not at the station, or off weeks, not
Off
weekends. Days, yeah. And then what was your original, what did you have for books originally? It sounds like you're pretty savvy. You knew you needed books. And I know that there were some issues with the way you were keeping books that led you astray. So maybe how did you start and what happened that caused problems?
Yeah, so from the very get-go, I think we started just like most businesses where it's all right here in my head. I would say I probably recognize, just because of, my upbringing and my father's professional background, I probably recognize sooner than most that, hey, we got to start looking at some spreadsheets and forecasting numbers and trends and stuff like that. So we moved from everything in my head to spreadsheets. And then, then I realized, hey, I need some type of official accounting program. So we moved to QuickBooks. QuickBooks is marketed as DIY. In my opinion, yes, it's easy to get in there and make a bunch of changes and moves, but whether you're making the right changes or not is a whole different story. And I think there was 2 or 3 years in a row where, like, at the end of the year, when we're trying to get ready for taxes, I had to have people come in and $3, $4, $5,000 to fix and organize our books. And even then they were only fixing and organizing it for tax purposes, not for me as the owner to be able to make strategic decisions, in the direction of the company. So, QuickBooks was just a beast for us. We had a lot of money coming in. There's a lot of money that goes out. And, some years there was more money that went out than that came in. We hope to limit those number of years and limit that delta there, right? We want more coming in than going out. But then, I'm fortunate that we were able to hire Tracy, who is our office manager. She has an accounting degree, and she also has bookkeeping experience. She used to work for a bookkeeping firm. So she has really taken ownership of our books. Me and her, we tag team them together, but to be honest, she does 95% of the work, 96% of the work. Super thankful for her coming on our team, and hopefully I'll treat her well enough where she'll be with me for 20 years, because I couldn't imagine not having her right now. So it's just developed to where not only is Tracy taking ownership of the books now, the QuickBooks, and we still have some internal spreadsheets that we use and stuff like that. But we recognized, a couple months ago, after, Will Blake, recommended Martin's book, and then I read Martin's book, I recognized, like, hey, like, I have a business coach as a consultant to help guide us on the processes and system side of things. Like, why don't we hire a financial consultant? And so that's when, talking with Blake, and he made the connection with Martin, and, me and Tracy now have, Martin to be able to bounce ideas off of, bounce questions off of, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. If the path is already laid for us, and there's stones that we can step on, we want to step on them. We don't want to try to clear the way through the woods and make our own path.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's something we talk about. The problems that people have today are the same problems they had 800 years ago when books were created. They're identical. And that's why a lot of people who try to create their own books don't really wind up improving them because it's been done. But anyway, faster you recognize, the easier it gets.
Yeah. So I want to go back to your management team underneath you. I think that's a huge piece of being able to say, I want to go from 5 to 10 and feel really confident. So you had mentioned sales manager, production manager. Anybody else on that management team?
We just hired a business development manager.
Okay.
She's fairly new to the team, 4 or 5 months on now.
Okay. And that's going to be for more like commercial work, or explain the difference for our audience of the sales manager and the business development manager.
So the sales manager is really just guiding our system designer. So he's the one that is making sure they're, being professional, educating our customers. Of course, he's responsible to ensure that they are making sales. We know people have issues. Our business is more of a need, not a want. If they have some of the issues that we deal with, they're going to have to get it fixed. And, we want to be the company that fixes that. So that's more so what the sales manager is responsible for. The business development manager, one of the things we identified about August of last year, 34% of our total revenue had come through our referral program. So at that moment, talking with our business coach, it's like, to some extent, the marketing's a love-hate relationship for me, but to some extent, it's out of my control. Like, I can spend more money, but I've learned this long, hard lesson in the past that spending more money does not always produce more results. And so, talking with another colleague of mine that I look up to, Brian Gottlieb, Brian calls it make marketing. And I won't say the word on the podcast here, but it's make it happen. And I'll let whoever fill in the blank there. But make it happen. And so, talking along with Brian, looking at our referral program, working with my business coach, it's like, hey, let's go make it happen. Let's hire somebody to make it happen. If we're getting 34% of our revenue through word of mouth, through referrals, and nobody's really managing that process, like, yes, I worked on creating referrals, my sales manager did. We tried to make it a team effort, and it's still a team effort today. But we hired Amber to come in, and she has full ownership of that. She's going out, she's having lunch with people, she's doing lunch and learn, she's educating people, trying to create those relationships. And, a lot of that work is on our sales team as well. Like, if we make a relationship with an HVAC guy, he wants referrals in return. So our sales team is typically the front line for us, having to reciprocate those referrals as well. So she's managing the overall program so far.
Yeah. There's a great book called Who, Not How. And it falls in line with exactly that thinking. Like, rather than trying to figure out how to do it, try to find the right person.
I've read it.
That can just do it for you.
Love it.
Yeah. So, very interesting. So you have this management team underneath you. I mean, honestly, I'd probably put, it sounds like Tracy maybe in that layer of management as well, at least going into that layer soon. as a controller, whatever you want to call it. So that's great. I think that's a huge testament to you as an entrepreneur of understanding that you need to leverage other people and not do it all yourself. And that you're not just creating a high risk job for yourself, but you're actually creating a business that could potentially run without you. Right. So
yeah, Tracy is definitely in the management team. I mean,
okay.
We're actually hiring right now, hoping to have somebody hired within the next week or two under her to help answer phones to free Tracy up to do more on the financial side. But also she's the quarterback of the team. Like if you want her to go, I mean, if my project manager needs help, she is the first one there that's willing to step in. If I need help, sales manager. So she's wanting to learn different areas of the business. So she's a huge asset to us for sure.
That's fantastic.
A quick ad break to tell you about Growth Kits. This is actually my company and you may have seen it around, but I started Growth Kits because I kept seeing contractors struggle with the same problems over and over again. They were trying to be better organized inside of their business, but kept drowning in the day-to-day operations. So whether you need a better CRM, a hiring process that actually works, or you just want to make sense of the tech stack inside of your business, we have systems that are built specifically for contractors. You can either grab our DIY guides and implement these systems yourself, or you can hire us to work with you on it and implement it for you. No massive consulting fees, no year-long commitments or monthly retainers. Just pick what you need right now and let's get it done together. Head over to growth-kits.com to see how we can help you construct your success one system at a time. That's growth-kits.com, or just click the link in the show notes. Now, back to the show.
I'd kind of like to jump back to, there was some event after you got books and you were up and running, something caused you to go, I know what it is. I'm going to see if we're on the same page about it, where you said, wow, this is false information I got. And it caused me to make some incorrect decisions. The size of the revenue is what I'm talking about, if you remember that story.
Yeah. So yeah, I know what you're talking about and I'm happy to explain that. But before that, there's been a couple other similar instances to where, just sometimes the numbers wasn't lining up. Numbers of what we were producing, numbers of what, our gross profits were, our gross profit percentages, our gross profit dollars, all the way down to the net profits. And to be fair, when I first started this business, I didn't care about net profits. I cared about getting Google reviews because, in today's society, you got to play the game with Google if you want to grow a company. So I wanted to make customers happy. I wanted to do a good job, and I was just looking to get reviews. I had my dad in my ear the whole time saying, hey man, the reward's got to be worth the risk. You got to make some money at some point. I was fortunate to have a full-time job at that time. And me and my wife lived, well below our means. So the fire department was paying, all of our bills. My wife had a job. So, we were living fine. And I just kept telling my dad, hey, the profits will come. The profits will come. And, we went over numerous speed bumps, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But there was a major event that happened for us on the financial side in 2023. This was not long after I hired Tracy. And I'll tell you in a minute why that's important. So met with my business coach approximately August of 2023. And I said, Stuart, something ain't adding up. My income statement is telling me that we are absolutely killing it. We're making $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 profit, $700,000 profit, but where is the money? And I say that because it's funny. I think it's under the title on your book, Martin. What is it? They say I'm making money.
So why don't I have any? Yeah. Why don't I have any? Yeah.
Well, I don't have any. So, me and Stuart, looked at a bunch of, financial documents, looked at our internal scorecards. Our first thought was that because we were still on a cash basis, which I'm so thankful we have swapped over to the accrual, but at the time we was on cash. And we chopped it up to a fluctuation in sales. And when that income was recognized, it was skewing the books. So we started tracking that. Well, come November, I think it's mid to end of November, we hired Tracy, I believe in September. So end of November, I met with Stuart again. I said, Stuart, 911 emergency. Like something's going on. It ain't sales. We got to figure this out. So me and him met one morning. spoke with him at home about like I am right now. I left to go meet my team for lunch, and they had a running joke every time they would see me. They were like, "What, you've been sleeping all morning?" And I'm like, "Yeah, if there was any morning I wish I was sleeping all morning, it was this morning." And they're like, "Well, why you say that?" I'm like, "Well, we're missing $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, and we didn't know where it was at. We had just identified that something was going on, and we had to do a little bit more digging in. And I had to go get my truck after lunch at a shop or whatever. But anyways, long story short, Tracy took it upon her and another manager I had. They went back to our warehouse at the time, and they started digging into it. And she called me probably 30, 40 minutes after lunch. I was still actually talking to a friend of mine that owns that shop, and she said, "Hey, we found your issue." And so, I can't thank Tracy enough. She was able to find the issue. And a long story short, there was a technology error between the integration of our CRM and QuickBooks. This is not the first time that's happened. This is actually the second time this has happened. The first time was with a different CRM. So needless to say, like, we do not link our CRM to our QuickBooks anymore. We may get back to a point where we test it out to some degree. But luckily we were, I'll tell you more about why I say we might test it out, but luckily Tracy was able to identify it. We had to make some changes in the business, some pretty significant changes. And I'll tell you how big this accounting error was. So I left the fire department. We had a private pension. I've been there for almost 12 years. We had a private pension. I was making, and it's public knowledge, so I don't mind sharing it, is $104,000 at the time as a captain. I had bought a $1 million commercial facility. So, those were some pretty big life-changing events. And I did all that based on the wrong numbers.
Wow.
And so when it hit hard. Now, back to the comment I made, thankfully, my wife and I live well below our means.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to do it without that.
That's right. And so I actually probably can take it back to say, thankful for my dad for teaching me some financial discipline growing up.
Do you mind sharing some of those financial disciplines, Cory? Because I think that's a really important thing that people kind of gloss over and assume people understand.
Yeah. So, well, it started when I was 7 years old, 6, 7, 8 years old. My dad's like, "We ain't rolling the window down in the car and turning the AC on." And I'm like, "Well, I don't understand why." He said, I get better gas mileage with no, I'm sorry. He said, "We're going to roll the windows down into the AC." And I'm like, "Why?" He said, "Well, I get better gas mileage with the AC off." So like, I laugh about it now, but it's the small things similar to that led up until I was 16 years old. And he, his big thing was him and my mom was like, "Hey, you have good grades, you play sports, you have a job, which we have not forced you to have. Like, we will pay for your truck. We will pay for your food. We'll pay for everything you need as long as your grades are good. You stay out of trouble. You don't have to keep a job as long as you're playing sports. If you quit sports, you got to get a job. But if you want a job," and I always wanted a job, so they were fine with that. But he provided me spreadsheets with everything. He's like, "Hey, this is what your truck costs. This is what the insurance costs. This is what the fuel costs. This is what wear and tear and maintenance." And he's like, "These are things we're paying for. You need to recognize it." Well, when I went to college, same thing. He's like, "Hey, you're playing baseball in college. Your grades are up. You're staying out of trouble. I'm going to give you $100 a week. $100 a week is your fuel, your food money. It does not include beer. Like, he told me, I'm not paying for your beer. If you want to drink beer, you pay for that on your own. However, but I had a spreadsheet for how I had to budget that $100. And so, he was able, and he's the type that, if he wants to buy a new car, even still to this day, he's looking at a truck right now. It will take him 6 to 8 months to go buy that truck. And he can afford it. Well, like 1000% he can afford it, but that's just how he is. Now, I'm a little bit opposite in that standpoint, where if I want something, as long as I can afford it, I'm going to get it like within days. But I'm just thankful, to see some of those spreadsheets he was putting together. And I even remember part of his job was making sure that he didn't overspend his $500 million budget that he had to manage, but he didn't want to underspend either. And so every year at Christmas, he took 2 weeks off. And I say off as in, like, he worked from home, because he'd have his laptop pulled up, and at the end of every day, he would go in there and look at spreadsheets to see like how much did they spend today, how much did it cost his budget. And he would be calling his subcontractor saying, hey, I need you to put 2 guys on overtime tomorrow. We need to get a little bit more work done. And he was managing that all the way down as close to zero as possible without overspending, because then overspending doesn't look good on him, but underspending, he needs that budget next year, and he knows if he don't spend it, they'll take it. So I was just able to learn a lot of these little things that added up throughout my teens, and even still today at 33 years old. Like, me and my dad still talk heavily on the financial side. Whether it's his finances, my finances, whatever, but it just intrigues both of us.
No, that's fantastic. I think that's a really big part of, you just even look at where we're at as a country and our finances. Like, people need financial literacy, and it doesn't come from a class. It comes from real life situations like your dad's put you through, and walking through the steps and having the errors, having the issues come up, living through those hard experiences where you didn't have money to pay for gas one week and you had to go back to your dad. Like, that's a small potatoes thing, right? But it puts you through the steps of what's going to happen in the future so that you avoid that.
Sure.
And I think in the same capacity, that's why there's a lot of value in sharing some of the financial details with your employees and having them aware of some of that stuff, because they approach problems differently. They approach inventory differently. They approach, cost overruns differently, because they understand the financial picture. Whereas if they don't have that view and that perspective or that lens, then they can make the wrong decisions and just not think practically, right?
Sure.
You know what? Just mentioning that in passing, the American Enterprise Institute does a survey every year and has for, 60 years or something. One of the questions is they ask people, how much net profit do companies make? 33%.
I wish.
Yeah. I just saw you. How's that working out for you? And besides that, if the profit you do make is tied up in inventory and receivables and that new skid steer and that kind of stuff. But anyway, yeah.
It sounds like Cory may have thought 33% was his net profit when he had these.
Well, that is what happened. Right? It double recorded some sales, right? So it made you look like you made a.
Yeah, that's right. So the financial issue was double reporting income. So it was only double reporting the income when we had a canceled job or a change order, which we don't have many of either. So if this was happening on every job, like, I'm confident we would have caught it way earlier, but it was happening just enough to slip through the cracks.
Intermittent.
But not enough for us to, and we had a bookkeeper at the time, but our bookkeeper really focused more on categorizing the expense side, not much on the sales, because we really only have one stream of income, and that's just project-based direct to consumer sales. So he was just classifying everything under sales.
There's a lesson here that I want to articulate real clearly for our listeners too, is that Cory's done a lot to understand his books and what's going on. And I think it is my message to people is that's your job, to understand how to use them, Cory. How to keep books so that, Service Titan doesn't double report to QuickBooks and this doesn't get accrued, and you send out an invoice, but when you get paid, you just make a deposit and don't. That stuff is technical. It's as technical as anything you do as a professional in what you do. You need to find a Tracy or a competent person to do that, because you're not going to be any good at it. Not that you're stupid, you could, but that's not what you're doing. And so anyway, that's a takeaway from this is
I agree 100%.
Understand how to use it, but you're not going to be the one who does it.
Quick ad break to tell you a little bit about OpenPhone. If you're a contractor that has a single cell phone, you're probably inundated with text messages and phone calls, oftentimes that you can't be responsive to or that you can't answer at all. So what's the solution? You can buy another office line with Verizon or AT&T, and you can have an iPhone that is passed around from employee to employee, depending on who's on call. But what if there's a better way? What if there's a way that you can have all your phone calls recorded to go back and listen to later, transcribed with summaries so that you can get a quick glance at what happened during the phone call? and even connect it to your CRM where all your other customer information is. OpenPhone is the perfect solution because it does just that. You're able to add all the users you need to for whoever needs to have access to the lines for your company phone. And then you can also find all of the information you need at a glance with a centralized location for all phone calls and text messages with your customers. Whether it's for marketing, for sales, or for service, OpenPhone is the perfect solution for you and your team. If you're interested, we have an offer down the show notes from OpenPhone. Please click the link down the show notes, or you can see it here on your screen to be able to find more information about OpenPhone. Thanks for listening. Back to the episode.
Can you share really quick, Cory, the CRMs that you've been through?
Yeah, when we first started, we was using a Zoho product, Zoho Invoice, I think is what it's called. It was just a free product that we started with. Did everything we needed to. Fine. We worked much into any automations or we didn't have any processes or systems then. Then we went to Job Progress. Was with them for maybe 2 years. Struggled through those 2 years. For anybody that's ever changed CRMs, it's an absolute nightmare. Especially when you start getting a team and you got to train everybody on a new CRM. So I was reluctant to change, but we ended up changing from Job Progress got bought out, which is now called Leap. But we ended up changing to a new CRM called Builder Prime. Builder Prime has done us good. It's not 100%, but I've tested a lot of them out, worked a lot of them. I don't know that you'll ever find one that's 100% perfect. But it does well for us. Full disclosure, like we probably wasn't tracking QuickBooks as good as we should have when we had that integration together. So the reason I said we're looking at slightly integrating is Builder Prime allows us to integrate either estimates, invoices, or payments. We can choose the three. And Tracy and I right now are talking about integrating the estimates only. That way it don't trigger a sale or a payment or an invoice or anything. That way a customer's proposal will automatically transfer to QuickBooks, and it saves her time having to type in the customer's name, the customer's address, their phone number. It'll automatically put it there, and then she can review that estimate in QuickBooks and decide when the right time is to create an invoice and all that good stuff.
So the way, and we don't have to spend much on this because I want to hear more about your story, but I work with a lot of companies on this exact issue. And a lot of times I actually have, if they're collecting payments through QuickBooks, I actually have them only send information from QuickBooks to the CRM and not from the CRM to QuickBooks. Now, the reasoning for that is because of essentially what you've said. Every time they create an estimate, well, if there's a change to the estimate, it creates a new estimate in QuickBooks. And then you have all this double entry happening or multiple duplicates. And so sales forecasting would happen inside of your CRM, and then actual numbers would happen inside of QuickBooks. Now you can do it the way that you said, because you don't want to have the double entry of like, okay, I've got to put it into the sales system and then I've got to put it into QuickBooks. But a lot of times if you're doing billing through your CRM, then I would just have the invoice only go. So only the payment goes into QuickBooks, because you're not going to get duplicate payments. You know what I mean? That's the way that I think about it. Yeah. But anyways, that's a big issue that people have, and some people aren't aware of it, just like you said, where they're integrated, it works. And that's not the case.
No.
Yeah.
I'm thankful Tracy and the other manager, her name was Tabitha. I'm thankful they found this issue. I mean, it was I would say 2 or 3 more months, this issue, it'll put us out of business.
Wow.
And at the time we were 3.7 million, I think is what we did that year.
Wow.
So like, I mean, we wasn't a huge company by any means, but we wasn't a 1 or 2 man show.
You weren't mom and pop. Yeah, exactly.
I'm thankful they were able to find it and we were able to correct it. Cause I mean, it was duplicating the income with 0 expenses tied to it. So you can imagine what that was doing for my net profit number. I mean, again, I left the fire department. I left a private pension. I bought $1 million commercial facility. I had to call the bank. And say it was an SBA loan. And I said, hey, like, I just want y'all to know there was no negligence on my part. I'm putting this in writing, so it's documented. This is what occurred. I will still be able to make my mortgage, but I want y'all to know ahead of time, because I didn't want them to think that I, forged the numbers or whatever. And thankfully they, most banks, like, as long as you pay your payment, we don't give a shit. But I mean, they care more than that. I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, I mean, this was a huge deal. I had promoted some people. I had created new overhead positions. I had given pay raises. I'd
Oh,
given myself a pay raise, and then that world came crashing quick. So
so how did you fix that? What was the so they you fixed the solution or the issue with the CRM and QuickBooks, but how did you fix that? The additional overhead, the increase in pay for yourself and other employees. How did you do that?
well, with the help of my business coach and bouncing some questions off Brian Gottlieb, Martin mentioned it earlier. The first step was transparency. I was transparent not with my whole team, with my leadership team. And, it took some time to come up with a plan. But first and foremost, the biggest part of the plan was I cut my salary significantly. The most, I was the first and the most. That's something I learned at the fire department as a leader. You're the first to do something that you don't want to do, and you're the last to do something that you do want to do. For example, at the fire department, leaders eat last. So when it's their time, the leader goes last. So cut my salary. I'm thankful that my sales manager lives well within his means as well. I had to cut his. Our goal really was to keep it from getting to our guys in the field. That was our goal. We wanted to absorb as much as we could within the leadership side. So I had to cut my sales manager's salary some. Again, I was able to do that through transparency and trust. That I feel like I had did a good job of already taking care of him in the past. So that allowed me to be able to have this conversation with him and him to buy into it. I had to cut some bonuses out, incentives for my management team. And I was just upfront and honest with them. I said, hey, we have to cut expenses, and we have to try to push our guys to get a little bit more out of them. This is going to be a team effort. Best case scenario, 6 months, worst case, 12 months. We were closer to the 12-month mark, and full disclosure, like we're out of the actual hole today, but the hole we're in now is we don't have the rainy day fund built up that we should for the size of company that we are. We do have some line of credits that we don't owe any balance on. So, at the moment, that's our rainy day fund, but I won't cash in the bank as our rainy day fund. So we still got some work to do this year. I think we'll come out of it once we have a solid 3 or 4 months in a row. I think we'll be out of it. But honestly, it just started with transparency.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, I want to give you a credit for calling the bank proactively, and that takes some courage. I mean, that's the right thing to do, but sometimes you think, well, I just keep paying them. They don't need to know this. And then bringing your team in and makes them loyal because they know they're getting that's very impressive.
I think you're giving I think what a lot of people miss when they aren't transparent, like you said, is they miss out on the opportunity to trust employees, and people want to be trusted. And by you sharing and divulging sensitive information that is, people could see it as embarrassing, people could see it as a shame, but it's not like you intentionally did these things. It's just the reality of what happened. And by approaching it like that, now your team has the opportunity to become a trustworthy person to someone else and to a company. And people want that opportunity. But whenever we hide these things, we miss out on the opportunity of creating a trustworthy team and a trustworthy environment. And that trust is so big. It's something that you can't really put a price on, is having a trustworthy team,
Sure.
So you can find skilled people, you can find, great people to work with, but finding someone you really trust and that trusts you, like now they trust you as well, right? If something else were to come up, hey, we got through this before, we can do it again because Cory's leading us, And so it's huge.
I'd like to kind of tie it together. What I heard was your books reported had $600,000 that you never made, and you saw that on your profit and loss statement, and you took action in the form of quitting your job and, hey, it's working great.
Yes,
Well, our listeners, and they're sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? You think you made $1 million and you don't have any money? Don't you think something's going wrong? Okay. Well, that's a question to you. Ultimately, you did. But I also want to point out that it is very possible to make $1 million and not have any money. because you bought stuff, inventory, you have it in receivables. So I just tying it together for people thinking, well, duh, if my book said I made $1 million and I don't have any money, I'd know something was wrong. Well, it happens every day.
You would feel it like Cory did, but you wouldn't know it.
Well, you'd be going, yeah, I mean, that's why that's the name of my book. You know, there are lots of reasons besides mistaken, coding that you make a profit, but you don't have any money. So I just think people listening wonder how that could happen. And it can happen really, really easily.
Well, and to your point, Martin, you know, your book talks about a couple ways of that occurring, and one of the ways is accounts receivable. I have never had that issue in my business. When we run the formula that you provide in your book, we are receiving full and complete payment within 3.5 days of job finishing. Now, I would say we are closer, actually, I think, to a day and a half. The only reason it's 3.5 days is because we finance a lot of jobs, and it takes, you know, a 2 to 3 day processing period to hit our bank account. So I actually think we're better than that 3.5 days. So that's not where we were losing money. I knew that wasn't it. I knew, like, we didn't have a ton of debt. Like, yes, we have assets that, you know, vehicles that we're paying monthly payments on, and we know the difference between the principal payment and the interest on that, where that goes on the balance sheet versus the income statement. That wasn't it either. So, you know, when I look at the ways of, like, when somebody says, well, how did you not know you were missing that? It's like, well, the telltale ways that you typically would miss it was not our issue, but we just didn't know where it was at. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, if you're under, you know, $4, $5, $6 million, it's probably pretty easy to say, how do you not recognize it? Especially if you're sub 1.5 million, like, as the owner, you're still heavily involved, and you know everything, you know every expense that's going out, and you know everything's coming in when you're at that size. But when you start getting a 3.5, 4 million, you know, you got to start building out a team. Right. I'm no longer the only one in the company that has a credit card. I think all my managers have a credit card. They all use it. They all have guidelines and, you know, spending limits and stuff like that they use it within. So you get to a point where every transaction doesn't run through you as the owner, and you can't scale a company if every transaction continues to run through you as the owner. You know, and I know my team's going to make mistakes. I know they're going to purchase things, you know, that I probably wouldn't, or I'd have bought a different product instead. Like, it's just part of growth that happens, and you have to make sure you're making enough net profit to overcome those issues. So it's real. It can happen. You know, don't judge a book by its cover. If you're a $1-2 million business, you may not recognize it now, but if you ask anybody, you know, 5, 10, 20, $30 million, they'll be able to tell you, like, hey, that's a real, you know, result that could happen to anybody.
Hey, I'd like to know specifically too, that listeners, something they can do. What do you look at routinely in financials and, you know, P&L and balance sheet, of course, and soon to be the statement of cash flow? But, you know, how do you use them? You said you use them to guide your decisions. How do you actually use the information to make a decision?
Well, so we know there's one delta in my business that I don't know. And we talked about it earlier, that I have some control over, but some not. And that's leads. If you get past leads, and, you know, Martin, when we talk about trying to hit 10 million, like, I can reverse engineer the numbers to say, all right, you know, we want to hit 10 million. Our average job is last year was $13,800. Our average close rate is 33%. Our average conversion from opportunity to lead, booked appointment, is around 75 to 80%. So, like, we can reverse all those numbers. And those are all reports that I pull from my CRM or internal spreadsheets that we have. We hadn't fully released our internal spreadsheets. Our CRM does a pretty good job on the reporting side, but I like spreadsheets for some reason. So I'm really looking at a lot of that to make decisions, and then I'm verifying it based on the income statement and the balance sheet, making sure that the balance sheet is heading in the right direction.
And I love that the numbers that you're focused on are not just revenue numbers or financial numbers, but you're looking at the sales metrics, because that's allowing you to forecast. And that's huge. I think it's really easy to go and look at the financials if you have a bookkeeper and they're giving you reports and say, okay, we're doing well. But you're just looking historical. And so I love that you're looking at the forecast. That's great. So I want to get back to the story a little bit. We talked about the integration issue. We talked about how you led through the revelation that you were not making what you thought you were making, and how you started with transparency with your banker, with I'm sure your family, with your team, and then how you led through that for about 12 months. You're out of that hole now, you said. What did it take to really get out to feel like you were out of the hole? And I'm sure you don't even feel like that because you mentioned you don't have the rainy day fund. And then also, what are some of the detailed technical things that you did outside of just like, cutting your salary? What were some of the things that you really focused on?
So basically all the numbers that I just told you, we had to focus on, like, hey, if we're going to spend 30, 40, $50,000 a month on marketing, like, and I'll reiterate what Brian Gottlieb says, like, the lead is sacred. So it starts with the lead. So if our conversion rate from an opportunity, which could be just a Facebook form fill, and most people don't realize Facebook makes it really easy for people to click one button and fill out a form. So they're not all qualified leads. But if we're booking 75% from opportunities to booked appointments, how can we get to 77%? How can we get to 78%? One of the ways we're working on that, which we actually have our first meeting today in an hour, is we hired a CSR consultant, a customer service representative consultant. Me and Tracy are going to learn from them, just like we've learned from Martin, just like we've learned from our business coach. We're going to document. We're going to create a training process for future CSRs that we hire, which hopefully we're hiring one here in the coming weeks. We're going to implement KPIs. We're going to implement ways that we can review and track those KPIs. And we're going to, I should have mentioned, implement also an onboarding process. So we're really, where we got to is we got to look at every single little sector of the business. So then we look at sales. How can we go from 33 to 34% close rate? How can we go from a $13,800 average job to a $14,200 average job? And again, that's something that my sales manager's done a really good job on. We have a sales coach as well, sales consultant. We've actually had a couple different ones that we don't believe one person holds all the knowledge. Our current sales coach may have a lot of good nuggets, but then the next guy may have different nuggets, right? That don't mean one's right or wrong, but every situation is different, and some may work for us, some may not. So we like not bouncing around as far as like week to week, but we do like working with different consultants to see what their experiences are and what their recommendations are. And then past that, the only consultant we haven't hired would be on the operations side, and mainly just because, like, I tell people this, and a lot of them, especially my employees in the field that don't remember, they wasn't here the days where I was in the field. I'm a blue collar guy. I would much rather be out in the field, hands on, mud on my boots, dirt on my hands, than staring at computers. Like, y'all are two good looking guys. Don't get me wrong, but I'd much rather be out in the field right now, even though it's wet and been raining for the last 2 days. It's cold. I'd rather be out there. I'm a blue collar guy. I take pride in saying that, but I also understand that to grow a business for not only myself and my family, but to be able to afford the opportunity to my employees and their families a good paying job, that I have to be in the office continuing to push the business forward to create the growth and also the net profit, to allow us to do extra things for them. A side note, I love telling people this. Last year, we were able to offer 3 all-inclusive vacations up to $4,000 for our employees. So we offered one in production, one in sales, and one in management. So like that was, my professional career to date, that was the best feeling ever, being able to offer that.
Oh yeah.
Did that go to a winner, or everybody had that option?
So the one thing we didn't have last year was good criteria to how we selected. So we kind of just selected internally at our leadership level. So we talked about options, we graded them, we judged them, and we just come up with one in sales, one in production. Tracy won it in the office for our leadership team.
She's going to win it again too.
She might win it again, but by default, my production manager, my project manager is getting ready to have a kid. my sales managers had a couple things going on this year. Of course, I'm not going to be the one that wins. So I would say Tracy won by default, but Tracy may have won by putting in the work as well. Tracy's a rock. I mean, it's hard for me to compare all my managers. They do a really good job, and they're all willing to help each other out. So yeah, we really just dove into each individual area of the business and how can we get, I think it's a little cliche, but 1% better. How can I'm not a 1% guy. It's like, how can I get 1,000% better? And I want to do it yesterday. But let's hire people who have already laid the path through the woods for us. Let's hire these consultants. Let's get them to show us where that path is, and let's follow it. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. There's plenty of companies out there that are $50, $100, $150 million businesses. If we just follow the path they've laid, we can have success as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. So you met Martin, you got the profit problem. What are some of the biggest takeaways that you're going through right now in the last 5 months or 6 months, whatever it is?
Well, I'll take it back, probably a year and a half. I have made every single mistake that Martin talks about in his book. Every single one of them. I'm not talking about most of them. I'm talking about every single one of them. So when I recommend people, I'm like, first off, I'm not a reader, and I had to read Martin's book because it was only available at the time in book. And I read it in 2.5 days. Wow. I've not read a book since probably elementary school. I hate reading. My English and my vocabulary are terrible. But I read it and I liked it. And I'm just telling you, I can relate because it's like, yep, I made that problem. And then a chapter later, he talks about another problem. I'm like, yep, made that one. And I'm calling my sales manager. I'm like, hey man, he's talking about another problem we've made. And, I guess through a little bit of hard-headedness and persistence, like we've kind of got through it for the most part. Again, we're not completely out of it, but it's just, it was eye-opening to be able to read some of the problems in there and how he simplifies. Martin, correct me if I'm wrong. Let me make sure my reading comprehension is good. But there's 3 ways if it says you're making money, you're not. It's accounts receivable, it's owner's draws, or paying off debt. Right? Is that
or buying assets
or buying debt? Okay,
yeah, in the book I called it 3 instead of 4, and paying off debt and buying assets are the same one. But okay. Yeah, so there is one other one that I don't talk about very much in there, but somebody's stealing from you. But
well, so funny, when I found the problem, that was the first thing people started asking me. My leadership team, we just got rid of an office assistant, and that was the first question they had all asked. But it wasn't an opportunity. Yeah. Like I know her personally as a friend. I know her like she's an honest, ethical girl, and I knew that was not the case. So yeah, but yes, right. To your point, that could be a problem.
No, but good job. Yeah, those are the reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So you read the book in 2.5 days. Then you called you got in touch with Martin. What have you guys been working through? Kind of walk us through what that process has been like.
So in my opinion, we've gotten to the important stuff. We haven't got to the fun stuff yet. So we needed to get our first and foremost, our profit loss, our income statement dialed in. We were actually in the midst of, at the time we first met Martin, we was in the midst of swapping from cash to accrual. And I've probably never shared this with Martin. I actually talked to 2 other consultants months before him, just trying to find somebody to help us make that leap from cash to accrual basis. And we could not find nobody. I mean, we physically could, it just wasn't, these other people that we spoke to, it just wasn't their business model. Right. And I'm not going to fault somebody if that's not their business model. Trust me, my business coaches taught me enough to know, stay away from it. But we could not find somebody to help us. So I told Tracy, we're going to have to figure it out. Like everything else we've done, we're just going to figure it out. And again, I'm fortunate that Tracy has had some bookkeeping experience. She's worked for a bookkeeping firm. She was able to bounce some questions off them. But we finally, we had transitioned a large part of it over to accrual. Martin was able to step in and help with some little touch-up items on the income statement. So we got that dialed in. We moved over to the balance sheet. I think the last 2 meetings, we've talked about the balance sheet, getting it dialed in. I just got word from Tracy yesterday that she made the last adjustment that Martin was looking for us to make. So I'm really looking forward to the next step, which is learning and understanding the statement of cash flows, and back to what Martin talks about in his book, being able to look at all three, the income, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows, to make strategic decisions throughout the company. So I think the fun part is next, and I'm definitely excited for it. And I know Tracy is super excited as well.
I think it's probably worth, because we've been talking about it a lot, or Cory has, cash versus accrual. Just for the people listening, cash basis books, a lot of you know it, others don't, does not mean that you're doing jobs for cash, right? Meaning where you get greenback dollars. What cash basis books are is they do not record a transaction until somebody has actually paid you or you have actually paid somebody else. So if you buy material on accounts payable and you haven't paid for it, it's not in your books. Even though you're going to have to pay that bill, it's not in your books. If you invoice a customer for a $100,000 job and they haven't paid you yet, that $100,000 job isn't in your books. That's cash basis. Accrual basis, you enter your transactions in your books when they happen. So if you write a $100,000 invoice to somebody, that $100,000 shows up in your sales. So anyway, that's the distinction. One records everything that actually happened, whether or not it's been settled. The other does not record it until somebody paid you or you paid somebody else. And you can see that one has a more complete picture. And I always say this, and then we'll drop that subject, but people tell me, I hear it a lot, they say, well, my accountant says I'm on the cash basis. That means they're paying taxes on the cash basis. That's, who cares? I mean, that's not our bailiwick. That's not a management deal. That's a tax law deal that you only, income and expense only count if they've actually been received or paid out. That's fine. But you keep your books on the accrual basis, and your accountant can pay on the whatever basis they need to. So anyway, hopefully, if anybody was wondering what we were talking about.
Yeah,
that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if you're not on accrual basis, you're just in you have incomplete records.
Yeah. Well, I think I really appreciate, Cory, you walking through so much and sharing, being transparent with our audience too. I think that's what's really going to help people, is not talking about just revenue, but talking about the real things. And so that's really helpful. I think you've got a very great mindset, and I think a lot of our audience can learn from that mindset. Thank you for sharing so much about your journey, and excited for where you're headed. I know that 10 million is definitely within reach just because of the mindset you have. So, yeah, if people wanted to get in touch with you, Cory, how could they get in touch with you?
Best is probably my email or social media. Cory, my name's Cory, Cory Parks, Parks. Email cparks@hydrohelp911.com. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help. Hopefully my transparency will show a lot that it's not all rainbows and unicorns. It's not. But ultimately, I will say I'm having fun. I don't think my business is worth enough to sell, but I am getting some phone calls and emails from private equity, but I'm just not interested. I'm having fun. My team makes my life easy. They're having fun. We cut up, and it's so far it's enjoyable. And probably the most important thing, and I've told a lot of private equity guys this, we're still making mistakes. And they probably look at me sideways like, what? I'm only 33 years old. Like, if I sell, I got to go do something else, and I'm going to make mistakes there too. So I don't just stay here and keep making them. We already have a good foundation laid. Make mistakes and get through it.
You made it to the end of the episode, but before you go, if you found yourself thinking about growing your construction business while listening today, I want to share something with you. It's called our 24 Things to Hiring and Training the Perfect Executive Assistant for Your Construction Business. And it's a free guide that we've created. It's not theory. It's what we actually use to help contractors hire the perfect executive assistant. And really, we help you find ways to delegate over 50% of your current workload and get back 20 hours of your time every single week. You didn't start your construction business to just be doing admin work, to be buried in paperwork and endless admin tasks. This is the guide that shows you exactly how to find and train someone who can actually take all that weight off of your shoulders. So this is a real actionable, great PDF that has templates and processes. It's really, really great. And I want you to check it out, even just to get your feedback and how we can make it even more valuable. But I know that you're gonna love it. The link is in the show notes. Please download it. We'd love to see how much of an impact it makes on you and your business. Thanks for listening to the full episode. Check out the guide. It's free. No reason to hesitate. No reason to wait. Download it now. And before you go, I just want to ask for your gracious subscription to our podcast. So if you have 2 seconds, it means the world to us. Just subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or if you'd like our weekly newsletter delivered to your inbox whenever we release an episode, please subscribe in the show notes. Every week, we're talking about real strategies on how you can grow and build a profitable construction business that runs without you, so you can have less stress, more time, and more money. Click subscribe wherever you listen to the show, and thank you again for checking out the Cashflow Contractor. See you on the next episode.